So last time when you were here, we visited the area around my home in Dumfries. So tomorrow we're going to leave Scotland and explore the past and present in Cumbria.
So do consider that if you drop anything and it goes through the propeller, we are going to hospital for a visit.
Oi. Oi.
Cumbria borders Scotland. At Carlisle, its capital, one is confronted with thousands of years of British history. Carlisle Castle's massive sandstone outline has been a fort for 900 years and still housed a regiment of soldiers until 1959. The most besieged castle in England, a symbol of royal prestige as a stronghold against the Scots. The blood of thousands of Scots and English soldiers have soaked the ground round this dour and pugnacious fort, the western end of Hadrian's Wall. Built by the Romans as a recognition of its abandonment of its conquest of Britain. Not just a fortification against the barbarians of the north, but a means to control the frontier by creating gates to control immigration, smuggling, and customs. For 300 years, the Romans lived peacefully in the area, with settlements, taverns, and shops across the wall's 73 miles.
It's incredible. It's incredible. This was built by the Romans to keep the Scottish out.
Peacefully, that is, but for the occasional battle with the warmongering elements of the Scots, then called the Picts or barbarians. Southwest of Carlisle lies the Lake District, the centre of our glimpse at the past and present of Cumbria, an area of outstanding beauty with its mountains and the 16 lakes that lie in its valleys. The Lake District has taken more than 500 million years to develop into the scenic extravagance it is today. Simply put, 4 million years ago, the Lake District was like one large mountain with rivers flowing down to the sea. When the Ice Age came about, vast glaciers formed, carving out the U-shaped valleys that are the dominant feature of the area. The 16 million visitors who come to the lakes every year are struck by the beauty, grandeur, and variety of the scenery. But it is in the mountains that we find evidence of the first visitors. Man's exploitation of the geological materials in Neolithic times. These early visitors to Cumbria created settlements, building wooden houses and rearing animals, as well as creating stone circles for use as ceremonial sites and places of burial. They created Cumbria's first industry by extracting flint to sharpen and polish into axes and spears.
And I think they found the axe head, so going back 2,000 plus years,
more than that.
in Africa.
Yeah.
So they traded as far away as Africa from there, all those years ago. So they've identified it as being flint axe heads from up there, I believe.
Mining and quarrying in Cumbria dates back to Roman times. Lead, copper, zinc, graphite, coal, and of course, slate. Perhaps the most famous of Cumbrian products. Honister Slate Mine is one of England's last working slate mines, making beautiful modern-day slate products and keeping the ancient skills and techniques alive. In bygone years, many of the slate workers lived inside the mines, only allowed to go home at weekends. Large blocks of slate were blasted and extracted from deep down inside the mountains, dragged and manhandled to other underground chambers where the skilled workers split the slate to the desired size and finish. Now, as well as the traditional slate for roofs, Honister produce an incredible range from fence posts to wine racks and tabletop presentations. A few miles down the road, the Scar of Thrakeld quarry cuts into the hillside. At its peak, producing 80,000 tonnes of ballast a year for the expansion of the railways. Ian Hartland tells us more about the quarry and the excavator trust.
This quarry shut on a large scale in '82, you see, and it laid about derelict for a bit. And myself and a group of others thought that the Lake District needed a museum or heritage centre representing its mining and quarrying heritage, which there's a lot. And the average tourist to the Lake District is quite unaware to the extent to which mining and quarrying has gone on over the last 400 years or so. And it's been a big industry. So we set up the museum. The excavator collection has sort of grown far greater than we ever anticipated. A group of us have been gathering those up for the last 30 years. And the railway, which is now in its 5th season of operation, representing a quarry railway, as you would have found it.
Now the quarry is a magnet for those who dream of steam engines and heavy mechanical machinery. I wondered if these clear waters are good for fishing. I asked an official from the Environment Agency.
And so do people fish here, or?
I've never seen anybody fishing up here. It's been very rare. I mean, the reason for me coming today, the excuse for me being in such a stunning place on a fantastic day, is with a report that this sort of dam that's obviously been built by picnickers or what have you, it was blocked in the middle, so migratory fish couldn't then migrate upstream.
Yeah.
So while I've been here, there was one in the pool up there, sea trout, but I've cleared the space in the middle so that fish can actually get through.
So how big are the fish that
Well, the one that was in there was, it'd be a good foot long, yeah. Sea trout, and I mean, it's pretty amazing when you think that they've probably been hatched in this river, they've gone out to sea, and then they've come back to this river to spawn, and they've fought all the way up from the sea to get up here.
The rivers are the veins of Cumbria, playing their part in the industrial development by serving as a power source to mills and manufacturers. They now rush and gurgle through the graveyards of Cumbria's industrial past.
The silence is absolutely incredible. And we're standing here in Cumbria's past, quarrying. There seem to be miles of piles of stone, waste, what was left over, now with trees growing up. And all that shale is the waste from these enormous quarries. You can still see the huge slabs of slate, deep down to deep pools of dirty brown water, which will go even deeper. Now the habitat of birds, but before an area of employment of hundreds of people.
The rivers were the power source for Cumbria's bobbin manufacture, a symbol of the Midlands textile industry, which at its peak employed some 150,000 people. Cotton from the slave-worked fields of America pouring into Liverpool to factories in the Midlands. In one town alone, 20 million bobbins would be used per year. At the Stott Park, just south of Windermere, a unique survival of the bobbin industry survives. Closing down in 1971, it has been restored to its working state by English Heritage. The wooded slopes of birch gave the landowners of Cumbria another rich source of income, and hundreds of these factories dotted the landscape.
Now the way they were paid by the gross, it was piecework. So for every piece that they cut, then they get paid. Now if you were sat on this machine, you were a blocker, you were doing the same thing all day long. Now, I think I'd lose count, counting up to 144 if I was working 10 hours a day, and a lot of them probably couldn't even count up to that number because they'd not had a formal education. So they learned how to count up to 12. Took the 12th one out, put it on the side. Count up to 12 again, take the 12th one out, put it on the side. When they've got 12 on the side, you know they've got the gross. And that's how they used to get paid. So that's how they block out for the smaller one.
Jack Livison was the last worker, spending 44 years in these arduous conditions till the factory's closure, producing 250,000 bobbins a week. The factories, quarries and mines employed thousands and brought great wealth to the landowners in Cumbria. They built great houses and amassing huge fortunes and vast estates. Typical of these were the estates of the Fleming family at Rydal, who owned most of the land and houses around Grasmere area. Rydal Hall looks today as it did in its heyday, set in its Italian-style gardens designed by Thomas Mawson, and now a beautiful retreat owned by the Diocese of Carlisle.
A beautiful example of the English country house. Down there, underneath a waterfall, is a little house, and that house was built in the 17th century, and its only purpose was for people to go and sit in, write, contemplate, draw, a little place of peace.
The Fleming family originated in Flanders, and they developed Rydal from the times of the Norman conquest in 1066. The estate flourished on which was then an important trading route. The Flemings built many facilities, including mills, schools, and inns. In later years, these facilities became rented houses. One such inn was situated in the picturesque village of Grasmere, the Dove and Olive Bough. In 1799, William Wordsworth, the English poet, who was part of the Romantic age in English literature, rented the old inn, which had been by then converted into a dwelling house called Dove Cottage.
They lived on £40 a year. £40, what's that? But of course in those days, the average earnings of somebody living in this area would have been £20 a year.
Wordsworth moved from Dove Cottage and rented Rydal Mount, just a few hundred yards from Rydal Hall, his final home for 36 years.
So this was Wordsworth's final home. It was very grand. It was a big house with a massive garden, a beautiful house. And he designed the gardens himself. Wordsworth walked some 3,000 miles in this countryside. They say it is where he got much of his inspiration. And you can see that. Everything is about you. The past, the present. And now, millions of people come here to do precisely what he did. Walking in the mountains, bicycling, riding. All the country pursuits. We owe Wordsworth more than just poetry.
We have a club fell race up to Summit of Ling Moor and back to the campsite. And everyone guesses their own time. And the nearest person to the time they've guessed wins.
How many miles is that?
Oh, it's only about 3.5 miles.
Not only those who are invigorated by the more physical pursuits love the majestic panorama. Mountain artist Joy Grindrod is one of the many local artists who eke out a living from this living canvas.
I've grown up in the Lake District. I was born here, and I've always been surrounded by mountains and, you know, the lesser populated regions, and I just it's in the heart.
The growth of the railways started to bring thousands of visitors to the region. Rich factory owners and wealthy upper middle class families from all over England started building or buying family homes or holiday mansions in the Lake District. Not so typical of these homes of the wealthy, but a wonderful example of Victorian lavishness, is the mock Gothic castle sitting on the shores of Lake Windermere, with turrets, towers and informal grounds.
Ray Castle was built by James Dawson, a surgeon from Liverpool, from money that his wife had inherited from her father. James Dawson said at the time, "I shall build a great castle so everybody can see how rich I am and how important I am."
The Lake District is full of icons to its splendour. One such is the Bridge House in Ambleside. Built as a folly in the 14th century, it has seen life as a bridge, a counting house, a cobbler's, a chair maker, and at one time housed a family of 8. Cumbria is now one of Europe's top 10 rural tourism destinations, offering visitors every type of outdoor pursuit or just enjoying the many lakes. Its slate-built villages offering a perfect antidote to the somewhat risky weather. But what else could one expect from this green and pleasant land? Its narrow, high-walled roads, a challenge to their visitors.